So, I'm sitting at the bar with my buddy when this absolute bombshell of a girl walks by. My buddy, without missing a beat, leans over and says, "Dude, I wouldn't eat or drink for a whole week just to sleep with her." Now this girl overhears him, and trust me, she wasn't shy. She spins around, smirking, and says, "Oh really? Easy deal. If you don't eat or drink for a week, I'm yours." I take my buddy home, lock his dumb ass in the closet with nothing but a couple of dirty magazines and his dreams to keep him company. A week later, the girl shows up, lets him out of the closet. He's starving, looking like a damn zombie, but he's still ready to cash in. She strips down, lies on the bed all seductive-like, and says, "All right, you won the bet, I'm all yours." My buddy stumbles over, touches her breast, and then sighs. He says, "So soft, like a fresh loaf of bread." Then he says, "Now, all I need is some butter." I decide to take my date for a drive, way out on a back road, somewhere far from town. You know, typical setup for a romantic moment, right? Everything's going well, and just as we're about to get to it, the girl stops me. "I really should have mentioned this earlier," she says, "but I'm actually a hooker, and I charge $20. Now I'm caught off guard, but what can you do? I dig into my pocket, pull out the cash, and hand it over. We get on with it. Afterwards, I light up a cigarette, just sitting there, staring out the window, cooling off. Then she turns to me and asks, "Why aren't we going anywhere?" I glance over and say, "Well, I should have mentioned this earlier too, but I'm actually a taxi driver, and the ride back to town's gonna cost you $25.
So, I met this absolutely huge guy at a bar, and after a few drinks, we decided to head back to his place. Things were heating up in the bedroom, and just as we were about to get it on, he stands up to undress. He takes off his shirt, flexes those massive arms, and says, "Baby, that's 100 pounds of dynamite." I couldn't help but drool. Then he drops his pants, strikes a bodybuilder pose, and goes, "See these legs? That's another 100 pounds of dynamite." I was getting excited, but then he dropped his underpants and I freaked out. I grabbed my purse and bolted for the door, screaming. He caught me just before I could escape and asked, "Why are you in such a hurry?" I turned to him, wide-eyed, and said, "With 200 pounds of dynamite and such a short fuse, I was afraid you were about to blow."
So I just moved in next door to this married couple. The wife and I had that instant spark, but we managed to keep things in check for a while, at least. Then one blazing summer afternoon, I dropped by for tea. While we were chatting, I noticed their gutter was a mess, so I offered to climb up and clear it out. As I'm up there, the husband's down on the lawn, rubbing lotion on his wife's back while they sunbathe. I couldn't resist shouting down, "Hey, you two, knock it off." They yell back, "We're not doing anything." A couple of minutes later, I call out again, "Seriously, quit with the sex." "We're not having sex," they shout back even louder this time. After a while, I come down for a break and the husband says he'll finish up the gutter. As soon as he's up there, the heat, the sun, and well, the temptation was just too much. The wife and I start getting a little closer. Before you know it, things are happening. And from up on the ladder, the husband shouts down, "Well, from up here, it really does look like you're having sex."
So, this guy had been asking me out for ages, and I finally gave in. He takes me to this fancy restaurant. Things are going well, and on the way home, he pulls over to this secluded spot. We start making out, and he's getting all handsy, but I stop him. I tell him I'm a virgin, and I'm staying that way. He looks a little disappointed, but says, "Okay, how about a blowjob?" I'm like, "No way, I'm not putting that thing in my mouth." Then he goes, "Well, how about a hand job?" I hesitated, never done that before. So I ask him what to do. He says, "Just imagine you're shaking up a Coke bottle to spray your brother." I figure, easy enough, right? So I grab hold and start shaking. A few seconds in, his eyes roll back, his head slams against the seat, and he's groaning in pain. Snot's running out of his nose and earwax is flying out. He's a mess. Panicked, I'm like, "What's wrong?" And he screams, "Take your thumb off the end."
It was my first week as the new secretary. One day while taking notes, I noticed the boss's zipper was wide open. As I left the office, I politely said, "Oh, sir, your Barracks door is open." He didn't quite catch on, and I thought that would be the end of it. But later, I guess, he finally looked down and realized. The next thing I know, He calls me back into his office, smirking. "Miss Jones," he says, leaning back in his chair. "When you noticed my barracks door open this morning, did you happen to see a soldier standing to attention?" Without missing a beat, I looked him right in the eye and said, "No, sir. All I saw was a little disabled veteran sitting on 2 duffel bags."
So, I'm out playing this new golf course and totally lose track of my hole. I look up and see this lady playing a bit ahead, so I walk over and ask, "Hey, you know what hole I'm on?" She says, "I'm on the 7th, so you're a hole behind. Must be on the 6th. But a few holes later, same thing happens. I lose track again. So I go up to her and she's like, "I'm on the 14th. You're 1 hole behind, so that's the 13th for you." Saved again. Later, I see her at the clubhouse bar, so I walk over, buy her around, and we start chatting. I ask her, "What do you do for a living?" She says, "Oh, I'm in sales." I'm like, "No kidding, me too." I ask, "What kind of sales?" She hesitates and says, "If I told you, you'd probably just laugh." I assure her, "Nah, not me." She finally goes, "All right, I sell tampons." At that, I burst out laughing like really lose it. She just rolls her eyes. "See? I knew it." I managed to catch my breath and say, "Nah, it's not that, it's just, I sell toilet paper, still 1 hole behind you." One day in 6th grade, our science teacher, Mrs. Parks, asked the class, "Which human body part can increase to 10 times its size when stimulated?" The room fell silent. Just then, little Mary stood up, glaring at the teacher. "You can't ask us that. I'm telling my parents, and they'll have you fired." Mrs. Parks, unfazed, repeated the question. Mary's jaw dropped, and she whispered to her friends, "She's in big trouble." But Mrs. Parks wasn't backing down. Finally, I mustered the courage to stand up and said, "The pupil of the eye." "Very good, Billy," Mrs. Parks smiled. Then she turned to Mary and added, "And for you, young lady, I have 3 things to say. 1, you've got a dirty mind. 2, you clearly didn't read your homework. And 3, one day you're going to be very, very disappointed."
One day, I decided to take a walk in the desert just to clear my mind. As I'm wandering out, pops this guy with a gun, pointing it right at me. He goes, "Why don't you sit down?" Well, what am I gonna do? I sit down. Then he says, "Now why don't you eat your own ass?" So, yeah, I ate it. The guy had a gun. Next day, same desert, same guy. He pulls the gun and goes, "Sit." So I sit. Then just like before, same story. He's got the gun. So I eat my butt again. By the 3rd day, I came prepared. This time I had a gun. We met out there again. And we ended up having a wonderful dinner.
All right, so there I was, sitting at my usual bar nursing a cold one when my buddy Tom bursts in, panting like he's run a marathon. This guy is usually chill, so I'm thinking, what's got him so worked up? He leans in and says, "Michael, dude, your wife, she's cheating on you with your best friend out in the woods." I stare at him for a second, half confused, half pissed. I down my drink, toss some cash on the bar, and storm out ready to catch the action firsthand. I trudge through the mud and trees, fueled by a mixture of anger and, let's be honest, morbid curiosity. A few minutes later, I'm back at the bar, wiping the dirt off my shoes and ordering another drink. Tom's looking at me like, "Well, did you catch them?" I shake my head laughing. First off, it was more like 2 trees, not a forest. And secondly, best friend? I don't even know the guy.
So there I was cleaning my 10-year-old son's room. You know how it is, socks everywhere, random toys shoved under the bed. But then as I straighten the sheets, I see this magazine. Not just any magazine, a bondage magazine. I nearly dropped it. Trying not to freak out, I slid it right back under the mattress and waited for my husband to get home. When he finally did, I handed him the magazine and let him flip through it. He's just as shocked as I was, flipping each page in silence. Finally, he hands it back to me. I look at him, exasperated. "What on earth are we supposed to do about this?" And he says, "I may not know much about this stuff, but one thing's for sure, we definitely shouldn't spank."
So, I'm out with my best friend, a big girl, like really big. Let's just say her chair's groaning every time she shifts and she barely fits between the table and the wall. Anyway, after a few cocktails, she decides to play it bold and yells to the whole bar, "If anyone can guess my weight, you get to screw me." The place goes silent for a second. Then this guy from the back, who's clearly had a few, yells out, "Lady, I bet when you step on the scale, it just says, to be continued. No way you're less than 3 tons? Without even blinking, she grins and shouts back, close enough. Looks like tonight's your lucky night, cowboy.
I get home late after a brutal day, spent hours fighting to keep my client, Mr. Right, off death row. I'm completely wiped, just want a drink and some quiet. But as soon as I step in, my wife starts in. Where have you been? Dinner's cold, and I'm not reheating it. She keeps going, but I'm too exhausted to argue, so I pour a drink and head up for a bath. While I'm soaking, the phone rings. She picks it up and hears that Mr. Right got his stay of execution after all. Realizing what kind of day I've had, she softens up and heads upstairs to tell me. She walks in, sees me bending over, drying off, and goes, they're not hanging right tonight. I spin around sighing, for heaven's sake, woman, do you ever stop? Back when I was a kid, Grandpa had this huge farm, and right down in one of the back paddocks, he'd made this dam into a perfect little oasis. Mango and avocado trees grew all around it, and there were picnic tables in the shade, though he rarely went down there. One evening, he grabbed a bucket to pick some fruit and decided to head over. As he got closer, he heard voices and splashing. When he peeked around, he saw a group of young women, skinny dipping in the dam, laughing and having the time of their lives. The moment they spotted him, though, they all shrieked and swam to the deep end, glaring daggers at him. One of them shouted, we're not coming out until you leave, you dirty old man. Grandpa said, I didn't come down here to watch you swim naked or make you get out. He held up the bucket and pointed to the water with a little smirk. I'm just here to feed the crocodile.
When I was 17, I was dating this guy who seemed sweet, maybe a bit shy. Christmas was coming up, and he got an invite to join my family for dinner, which seemed like a big step. Apparently, he decided to make a stop at the drugstore first. Nervous but hopeful, he bought himself a pack of condoms and, on a bold impulse, picked up an extra pack just in case, mentioning to the clerk that my mother was smoking hot. Christmas Eve came, and we're all gathered around the table. He was so quiet, hardly saying a word, just sitting there sweating bullets. Eventually, I leaned over and whispered, if I'd known you'd be this quiet, I wouldn't have invited you. He turned red and whispered back, if I'd known your dad owns the drugstore, I wouldn't have come.
All right, here's how it went down. I walked into the kitchen still half asleep, and there's my wife casually prepping breakfast in nothing but the t-shirt she wears to bed. Before I even said a word, she turns to me with this look in her eye and says, you have to make love to me right this very moment. I couldn't believe my luck. Still foggy from sleep, I thought, is this real? Not wasting a second, I sweep her up and give it my all right there on the kitchen table. Just as I'm catching my breath, she calmly heads back to the stove like it's nothing, her t-shirt barely back in place. Totally confused, I'm like, so what was that all about? And she answered, oh, the egg timer is broken.
I'm riding in a cab with my 10-year-old son through the rainy streets of New York. As we go by, I notice a few women hanging around under the awnings trying to stay dry, you know? My son spots them too and goes, Mom, what are those ladies doing? Thinking fast, I say, oh, honey, they're just waiting for their husbands to get off work. But of course, the cabbie just has to butt in. Lady, come on, just tell him. They're hookers, kid. They get paid to sleep with men. My son's eyes go as wide as dinner plates. Is that true, Mom? He asks. I shoot the cabbie a death stare, give my son a reluctant nod, and hope that's the end of it. But a few moments later, he pipes up again, Mom, what happens to their babies? So I glance over at the cabbie and say, most of them end up as cab drivers.
Fed up with my husband always coming home late, I decided to teach him a lesson. I left a note on the dresser. I'm done, don't bother looking for me. Then I hid under the bed to see his reaction. Finally, he walked in, read the note, and started laughing. My heart was pounding. Then he pulls out his phone and while scribbling on the note says, hey babe, she's finally gone. About time, right? Put on that little French number, I'm coming over and we'll do everything we've dreamed of. I could barely breathe as he hung up, grabbed his keys, and left, whistling on his way out. Fuming, I crawled out from under the bed, ready to tear that note to shreds, until I saw what he'd written at the bottom. I can see your feet. We're out of bread. Be back in 5.
One day as a kid, I was with my dad at the pharmacy, and we walked by the condom display, and I asked, what are these? My dad, keeping it real, said, those are called condoms, son. Men use them for safe sex. Oh, I see, I replied, thinking back to what I learned in health class. I glanced over the display and picked up a pack of 3. Why are there 3 in this package? Dad said, those are for high school boys, 1 for Friday, 1 for Saturday, and 1 for Sunday. Cool, I said, spotting a 6-pack next. Then who are these for? Those are for college guys, he answered. 2 for Friday, 2 for Saturday, and 2 for Sunday. Wow, I exclaimed, impressed. But then I noticed a 12-pack. What about these? Dad sighed, a tear in his eye, and said, those are for married men, son. 1 for January, 1 for February, 1 for March. I'm having this real issue in the bedroom, right? Happens way too fast, and my wife's starting to notice. I should probably talk to someone about this. And I go see a doctor. Guy's dead serious as he tells me, next time you feel it coming, do something to shock yourself. You know, something unexpected. That night I walk into a store and grab a starter pistol, just as the doc suggested. I race home dying to try it out. So later that night, things are heating up, right? We're deep in the middle of a good old 69 and I can feel it building way too fast. I remember the doctor's advice, grab the pistol and bam, I fire it. Next day I drag myself back to the doctor. He's all curious. Did it help? I look at him and say, nah doc, when I fired the pistol, my wife was so shocked that she defecated on my face, bit off 3 inches of my manhood, and the neighbor popped out of the closet.
When I started as a new nun, I was assigned to help with Father John's Saturday bath. Sister Agnes, the oldest nun, gave me the instructions. Get the water and towels, don't look at his, just do what he asks and pray. The next morning, Sister Agnes pulled me aside. So, how did it go? Oh, sister, I sighed, feeling my face heat up. I was saved. Saved? And how exactly? Well, as Father John soaked, he took my hand, guided it between his legs, and said, Sister Heather, this is where the Lord keeps the key to heaven. Her face didn't move. I went on. He told me if his key fit my lock, the portals of heaven would open, and I'd be granted salvation and eternal peace. So he showed me. It hurt at first, but he said the path to salvation was often painful, and that soon the glory of God would fill me. And it did. Sister Agnes took a deep breath and said, that old liar. He told me it was Gabriel's horn, and I've been blowing it for 40 years.
I'm driving way too fast, and I know it, but I can't help it. Suddenly, lights flash behind me. My heart's pounding, hands sweating. I'm caught. The officer comes over, and before he even says a word, I'm blurting out, I know, I was speeding, but you don't understand. It's life or death. The officer looks at me, raising an eyebrow. Life or death, huh? Care to explain? Look, officer, there's a naked woman waiting for me at home. He just stares at me, not buying a word. And how exactly does that make it life or death? I swallow hard, realizing this sounds insane, and stammer, because if I don't get there before my wife does, I'm a dead man.
When I was 10, my best friend revealed to me that adults have these huge secrets. He said, if you play it right, you can get them to spill. I thought, no way, but then again, why not give it a shot? First, I go up to my mom and say, Mom, I know everything. Her eyes get wide and she looks around like she's hiding something. Next thing I know, she slips me a $10 bill and says, just don't tell your dad, okay? Now I'm on to something. So I head to my dad, pull the same line. Dad, I know everything. He almost drops his coffee, then hands me a whole $100. All right, kiddo, he says nervously, but keep this between us. Don't tell your mom. Feeling like a little mastermind, I answer the door for the mailman. I look up at him and say, I know everything, mister. The guy's face goes pale, his mouth falls open, and he drops his mailbag. Then with a tear in his eye, he chokes out, well then, come give daddy a hug.
After a long, intense night together, he finally catches his breath and glances over at my nightstand. That's when he notices the picture of a guy sitting there grinning back at him. I see his face tense up and he goes, is that your husband? I laugh, pulling him closer. No, silly. He doesn't let it go. Your boyfriend then? I shake my head, nuzzling his neck. Nope. All right, maybe it's like your dad or a brother. I almost lose it laughing. By now, he's totally freaking out. Then who the hell is it? I just say, that's me before the surgeries.
I'd represented this stunning actress for years, secretly dreaming of one night with her. Then I found out she'd been selling herself for $500 a night. Shocked but excited, I decided to take the plunge and approached her. She smirked and said, "Same price as everyone else, Todd." "Hold on," I argued. "I'm your agent. No discount?" "Not a chance, Todd. $500 or nothing," she shot back. So I agreed. And that night, after her show, she showed up at my place. We went at it like there was no tomorrow, and it was incredible. A while later, she was moaning again. This was happening again and again. She could barely keep up, panting. "Wow, Todd, you've got some serious stamina. I never realized how lucky I was to have you as my agent." A voice replied from the shadows, "I'm not your agent, sweetheart. He's outside selling tickets for $1,000 a pop." So, I stroll into the pharmacy, feeling a bit annoyed, let's say. After a few minutes of pacing up and down the aisles, the sales girl comes over and says, "Can I help you?" "Yeah, I'm looking for some feminine products for the missus." She leads me down the aisle, points to the usual boxes, but I keep walking and end up grabbing a huge bag of cotton balls and a roll of string. She's staring, totally confused, and finally says, "Sir, I thought you needed feminine products for your wife." I look her dead in the eye and go, "Yeah, I did. But see, yesterday I sent her out to grab me a carton of smokes, and she comes back with loose tobacco and rolling papers, 'cause she says it's so much cheaper. So I figure if I gotta roll my own, well, she can too."
So, my husband and I are lying in bed, winding down, when suddenly he lets out this huge fart and proudly goes, "7 points." I roll my eyes. What the hell was that? He grins. "It's fart football." All right, I'm game. I wait a few seconds, then fire back with a fart of my own and say, "Touchdown, tie game." Now he's looking competitive. Not even a minute later, he blasts another one and says, "Touchdown." I'm up 14-7. Oh, he thinks he's winning? I give it my all, letting out a proud rumble. "Touchdown, we're tied again." Then he squeezes out a tiny squeaker for a field goal. I'm up 17-14. At this point, I'm practically sweating, desperate to make a comeback. I'm straining, face red, but then, oh no, I feel something warm and squishy under me. I've just crapped the bed. It's spreading across the sheets like some awful chocolate pudding disaster. Without missing a beat, I look him and say, "Halftime! Switch sides!"
When I first became a priest, I was pretty nervous, fresh out of seminary, starting my first day in the confessional. Father O'Malley, my predecessor, left me a list of common sins and the penances to go with them, so I figured I'd be covered. The first guy steps in. "Forgive me, Father, for I've sinned," he says. "I've stolen." I check the list. Stealing 1 Hail Mary, and he's on his way. Then this woman comes in. "Bless me, Father, for I've sinned. I had oral sex with the window cleaner." I flip through the list, but there's nothing for oral sex. I'm stumped, so I crack the door and yell out to the cleaning lady, "Hey, what does Father O'Malley usually give for a blowjob?" She shouts back, $10 and 15 if I take my teeth out.
I'm working the late shift as security at Home Depot, strolling through the parking lot, when I notice this car way out near the edge with its dome light on. Naturally, I walk over, figuring someone left it on by accident, but nope, inside there's a guy in the driver's seat, flipping through some tech magazine, looking totally absorbed. In the back seat, there's a pretty young girl, totally focused on knitting. Yep, knitting. I'm thinking, all right, this is suspicious in all the wrong ways. I knock on the window and the guy rolls it down, all calm. "Yes, ma'am?" Trying to piece it together, I ask, "Mind telling me what you're up to here?" "Oh, just reading this magazine," he says, then points to the girl. "And she's, knitting." "Right," I keep my tone steady. "How old are you?" "I'm 19, he answers, a little too casually. "And her?" I ask. He checks his watch and goes, "Well, in about 12 minutes, she'll be 16.
When I was young, I was a nun in this little convent where every morning was quiet and peaceful. One day, the Mother Superior wakes up looking like she's just won the lottery, and we're all watching her like, what on earth happened? Sister Mary asks her, "Good morning, Mother Superior. Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed?" Mother Superior laughs and says, "Not at all, Sister Mary. I feel wonderful today." Then she bumps into Sister Rebecca, who's just as confused. "Good morning, Mother Superior. Did you wake up on the wrong side of the bed?" Mother Superior says, "Nope. I'm in a fantastic mood." Finally, she meets Sister Sarah. "Mother Superior, did you by any chance wake up on the wrong side of the bed?" "Sister Sarah, that's the 3rd time I've been asked that. Do I look grumpy or something?" Sister Sarah replies, "Not at all, Mother Superior. but you're wearing the bishop's shoes.